Let me get the link because se me olvidó. And let's name this. Oops. Okay, let me get this going. I don't want to schedule it. We can publish it now. Oh, okay. That also means my oven is ready. Saludo, mi gente. I hope that you are well. And I think I can take off my apron. Okay, I don't know what just happened right here, but something just, okay. I didn't do it. All right. So we are, ouch, hold on, let me adjust myself. We are in quite the portal, my friends. And I know it's been a little bit since I've posted. I'll tell you, can I be honest? Is honesty okay here? I think so, right? I think my platform is full of nothing but honest experiences and honest engagement. And I know you've heard me say this before, I've still been figuring out how to manage my depression, manage my mental health during this season. It's really appropriate actually for this video because the new moon just happened. Right now we're in the Jewish new moon, which is Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. We just had the summer solstice as well. So we're really in an extraordinary portal for many things and many other wonderful things that I do not know. I have not retained the specifics about in terms of our, galactal happenings, our planetary happenings. Having said that, I did want to come in and pull some oracle decks. I'm not particularly using tarot. I'm using the Nativa Oracle deck, which is the Kohenet deck, which is exciting. It's about the archetypes that we use in our priestessing, in our Jewish priestessing or Hebrew priestessing. And I also wanted to bring in the Oracle deck of the moon. I never remember the name of these things, which is probably awful, but just in case, here's the cover of the cards. So if you like it, then you can use it. But I know they're the moon oracle oracle deck. So this month, the way this month is heading in, Tammuz often, or Tammuz, often its energy is about death and rebirth. It's about mourning and grief and loss. And I always say, while the more time has passed and the older I've gotten, the more challenging it's been for me to keep on time like I used to with the high holidays in the Jewish tradition. Our cycles often, and this is a conversation I've had with my daughter, around our cycles often matching like the energetic beacons and vortexes that are happening, which is a thing of beauty. Really, it is a thing of beauty. And that's what there's so much like, I have so much respect for some of the ways in which these ancient calendars are still powerfully valid. So one of the pieces around, I'm just going to shuffle until I'm done. One of the pieces around some of this is really the recognition of the time we're in. What I love, so I've been studying, I'll finish my sentence. I've been studying much more in-depthly decolonization. And one of the things that I've been studying is Pokalenu's Stages of Decolonization. It's an article that was based on some other teachings and noticings of the process of decolonization that has been underway in Hawaii. And one of the things about this particular cycle that I really enjoy, and am working to handle in a way that's super respectful, because it is from sibling indigenous tribes and work that the First Nations are doing as well, or rather, predominantly in this land, in Turtle Island. And so one of the stages of it, and I can do a separate video talking a little bit more about this, and I do want to, because I think there's so much good medicine, not to be appropriated, but to really be in deep relationship with. The first stage of it, and it's kind of like one of those things that works cyclically, and you can be at any point and begin again in the same place. So the first stage is rediscovery. And one of the things, rediscovery, one of the things about it is that you get to this place where you realize, right, or you come to a remembering. And that's what we're seeing now with the Black Lives Matter movement, with a lot of the actions that are happening and the protesting that's happening. It's a really huge awakening. And in this awakening, there is a remembering, that is no longer subjugated or attached to the colonization that's happened here on this land, to the various peoples, and also the internalized colonial mindset, right? And so understanding our history is really important because of this. So having this awakening, it's not just all of a sudden, it's been in the rumbles. And those are one of the things that we know about the cycles of change in our own lives. You've been processing things, and then there comes a point where it all comes to the light. And when it all comes to the light, it reaches kind of this mass, and it's ready to be processed through what would be next in the stages of decolonization, which I love and have so much respect for. And the next stage is actually mourning. So this is one of the reasons why I've fallen in love with the stages of decolonization, because for me, on a very visceral level, between your ancestry and the future, there is this absence of mourning ritual that is necessary in order to process the violence, in order to process the harm, in order to process what's been missing, in order to process what's been lost, in order to kind of clear out the pain vibration, and to allow ourselves that process, which is why we have ritual around death and birth and rites of passages, because we're moving the human psyche through processes that not only take something from a mental space or a conditioned space, but it actually moves through the body. So you have a waiting time that's time-based and anchored in this reality. You have like rituals, and you have all these pieces to help your cognition, your psyche, your spirit, all of them move in relationship to what's being experienced here, but also kind of what you're bringing through into this collective, right, process. And I want to say collective growth and evolution, thankfully. And it's painful. It's painful. And what's really interesting is when you witness, and I see this a lot, and I see this a lot around folks racialized as white. I see often when there's a lot of upheaval and a lot of action around justice and equity for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, when there's like this noticing that there's a rumble going on, folks racialized as white are like, wait, but I have a boo-boo too, right? And this is like the challenge about this, is that it's not about comparable, right? It's not about what we can compare it to, but that the time has come for this mourning, for this grieving to happen, for this justice, for this equity to happen, as would any cycle in our evolution. And so what becomes important in action and in communal movement is kind of a decentralization. And because here in this country, whiteness and white supremacy has been centralized and been the dominant force, um, that we've all been in some way or another, regardless of whether you desire it or not, you've been given the conditioning and you've been handed this like way of being in the world that is at the expense of others. And so when I'm looking at what's happening in our collective consciousness, in our literal reality around Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color, in the various like spectrums, because we're not a monolith, that this exists, there's also this recognition of what's happening in the process. There's an outcry, there's grieving, and there's mourning, and it's happening in the streets, right? So there's a macro thing happening, and I want to bring it into the micro, just for a minute, because I think it's really important that we talk about that. In order to talk about a thing, we don't need to diminish something else that's happening. So we don't need to diminish the importance of what's going on in our communities. We don't need to diminish and decentralize the importance of Black and brown bodies in order to talk about all the other pieces. And so one of the things that I think is important to observe is whether or not in your own life, with this energetic portal that we have experiencing right now, that we're experiencing right now, with the summer solstice, all things are coming to the sun. If you're in the north anyway of the equator, or actually the north of the states, my bad. The question being, what? Because I could go on forever with like all the layers, and it's just a thing I do because I think it's important to name things that often go unsaid, and it's important to me that we learn to build our capacity to hold all the conversations, but also know how to prioritize what is super necessary, right? And so that's where we're at in history now. What's happening is super necessary, and it is imperative and important to know, for me, contextually, as a light-skinned Puerto Rican, I'm committed to the work of my communities, and I'm committed to the naming of the things that we often want to run from. And I recognize all the spaces that deeper conversations around the impact of living in this particular country and the history around it has for many people in many nations. So having said that, what are the ways that you are creating space in your own life for grieving, especially whether you are a person of color or whether you are a person racialized as white? There is also a grief of recognizing the ways we've been complicit in the pain and in the tragedy and in the victimization of other human beings in this place. And so when we come to that recognition, there's a process for that. There's a process that we must all endure. Equally, these things give us a model for the things that we must for ourselves in our own lives take the time to process. What are you mourning? What have you lost in your own life? Not necessarily, if you're a person racialized as white, not necessarily in relationship to the movements that are happening now, but also like in recognition of what processes are you moving through yourself. And for all of us here in this particular platform, because my commitment is that we live fully and live free, and that freedom is contingent on our understanding that it happens in many ways and in many dimensions, and it's not a one-dimensional thing. It's not a one-layered thing, right? And this is really important. And so with this new moon, this is an opportunity to set a different intention. The summer solstice, an opportunity, all these portals, right? And Tammuz, to say to ourselves, what are we grieving? What are we releasing? And that can be mindsets as well. It can be ways of being in the world. It can be also things that you have not experienced closure around, but you need to allow yourself a process by which to release. And so pulling Oracle today is really, for this session, is really about receiving, if you will, a word, a word for us during this time. What are the things that we need to release ourselves? What is energetically sitting in the realm? And so my hope is that as you're listening to me, you're holding an intention. Maybe you have a question. Maybe there's something you've been pondering and have been needing an affirmation or needing a support or an encouragement around. And so my prayer is that as these cards move and as they show us messages, may it speak deeply to our hearts. May it be transformative and healing, a balm for our times. May it be the medicine our soul needs and the guidance about what we are working with during this time and this season, right? So new moon to full moon, new moon to new moon, these are cycles that give us an opportunity to check in. And you know this, this is something you know. I'm actually going to do the most outrageous thing in the world right now, and I need to go put my bread to bake. So if you can give me 1 second and just enjoy, okay, cards are flowing out, and just enjoy the view, the tropical view behind me. I'll be right back and we'll continue because this is what it looks like. I got to pause to put that bread in because I don't want the cornmeal on the baking sheet to burn on the baking stone. So give me 1 second. I'm going to pull 3 cards for each. This is how you know you're with me in real time. When I was a young mother, how do you like that? I used to imagine that my work and my business online, when I first started, you may not know this, when I first started, my website was Akeres Habayit blogspot. And Akeres Habayis back then is a housewife and or like a woman who cares for the home in Yiddish, actually. And my desire was that when I would share my life, I was interested in sharing my life. And I wasn't so much interested in like telling people what to do as much as I wanted to share processes and share what's real. And so I love that I get to put the bread in. You didn't get to see that while I'm talking to you because that was so important to me. And I also, you know, when I think about it, and I'm still in a place of evaluating like what makes sense to bring, right, and to offer. And I live in so many intersections of work and passion and how I show up. And when I think about that, I think at the core, I want to share what's real as we move through our lives, because we don't see enough of that. We see a lot of curated stuff, right? But we don't get to see what's real. Like my hands are full of flour while I'm shuffling the deck. and my sink is full of dishes, and that's it. And my life has been challenging, and I've been struggling. And as great as it sounds to, show up and do things that looks like we have these finished lives, my life is not finished. It's not as much as, don't get me wrong, I was conditioned just like everybody else to like all have all these ducks in a row. And so it's really the work of decolonizing my life is challenging, beautiful and challenging. Because we've been taught that we are to be in a perpetual place of wanting to be better than what we are, never loving ourselves where we're at. And to me, liberation cannot happen unless I can be with all the pieces of me and not just the exciting ones. So here we are. I'm going to pull the last card from the Medieval Oracle deck. And it's just offered itself. There it is. I love what it's putting out. All right. So this month of Tammuz, for us in Jewish ritual, we have so many things coming on and happening as the time continues. And in real time, we're in summer here, and we're still, as a collective, uproaring and breaking and really engaging in ways that are all about liberation. And so I hope that you're in support of that. And I hope that if you have a platform, you're using your platform to elevate what is present, and not just now. Let it be a way of life that we would be committed to each other's liberation in big ways without needing to centralize our own when it's necessary for others to be at the forefront in this particular dynamic, right? So what do the cards, what do the blessed ancestors, spirit, what does it have to say to us about this new moon and the intentions moving in this energy? So for the new moon, for the moon oracle deck, we have 3. I love this. So I've been pulling tarot for myself in a particular order. And the order that I've been pulling it in has been with one card that's a centralized focus, the thing I need to focus on for the day, the energy. And then a card that speaks to me of what I need to embrace and what I need to let go of. And so I pulled in the same rhythm and energy. And so the card of focus for the Moon Oracle deck is I focus on what is working. Let me show you this shit. Look at that. What is working? I don't know about you, but sometimes I know for myself, especially with my struggles with depression and stuff like that, it can be so easy to focus on what's not working, especially when you're seeking to really continue to support yourself, right? And really figure out how to move and be in your own embodiment. And so to focus on what is working, to me, is a really sacred thing. Now look, and also an act of gratitude, a radical act of gratitude. Like, this may need some changing, and this is actually working amazing. And so learning how to bring ourselves back to a center that says, this is working great. This is not so much working great. And I can work on that, but I can centralize the feeling that what is working great, I can centralize that feeling as a place to anchor so that I can feel generative, right? Which is important. So let's look at this again, because I love the fact that she's pointing her arrow, right? And that is a really important thing. So what is working in your life? That's where we need to focus on. What is working in the ways we're engaging the world around us? What is working in how we're caring for ourselves? What is working in our relationships, and what is not, right? But centralizing the things that are, so that we're grounded. What does it tell us to embrace? I love this. It tells us to embrace, I forgive and let go with loving ease. Have you been needing to hear that? I love the expression of the card because it's like an open heart. That this is a very like yogic type of move, right? Where it's a heart opening, back expanding position so that you can really open up and let it go. For me, grieving, my mother's transitioning, still, I'm always going to miss her. And one of the things that I don't know if you've ever experienced depression, but it's a contraction, right? You contract inwardly. And so for me, one of the things I do physically is when I'm really in a rough place or really in an anchored, muddy place, I will lay on my yoga mat with one of those buffer pillows, and I will lay back and allow, like, I'll bring my arms up behind my head and allow my chest to open up. Now you can do this um, in your bed or on the floor. It's a little bit better because you have a much more solid ground that can help anchor so that you can expand. And what I would offer up is stick some pillows like underneath your shoulder blades and before your waist, like either roll them up or pile them up, and then lay over that so that you have a heart expanding feeling. And so sometimes I'll lay on my yoga mat just to cry or just to feel or just to expand what to me I'm holding, right? Which is, it's okay to hold, and it's also okay to open up and release it, right? With loving ease. Some days we're going to hit that mark, and other days we are going to be searching for it. Right? Like some days you can be in the practice of being gentle with yourself and kind with yourself. And some days you got to go chasing that because you're out of practice or because you're overwhelmed with all the things that are weighty and dense. And so I think that's a powerful thing to embrace, the practice of opening up, breathing through that and letting it go, right? This is why breath is so important. The card that it's offering us for release is the following. It is safe and beautiful to express my sensuality. No coincidence that you're embracing and you're releasing. And what you're embracing and you're releasing, sensuality to me is so beautiful because it's so connected to senses. And in addition to that, but just this really huge like embodiment, right? Like being in your body, feeling, expressing, owning, like allow yourself that particular experience. And this morning I went for a walk to the river. I know it's like 30 minutes, but bear with me. I went to a walk to the river and just allowed myself to take in the smell, the sight, the scent, like all of it, allowing it to be a sensual experience, giving myself permission to have that. And this is what needs to be released, is the ways that you are not allowing yourself to experience being fully present in your body. The card from the Nativo Oracle deck that teaches us to focus, look at delight in the sweetness of life, Na'ara, the maiden, a space of beginning, the new moon. When we are in so much upheaval, never underestimate the beauty of a home cooked meal, the beauty of taking care of each other, the beauty of savoring and enjoying, because living is as important as fighting. Liberation also comes through sweetness as well as the bitter. And they happen often enough simultaneously, which is often challenging for us. But the focus is the maiden is the energy of newness. It's the energy of a beginning, which is where we're at. So as you set, if you did set intentions already, wonderful. If you want to go back and revisit your intentions, what are the ways that you can be fully present with yourself? The thing that they're asking us to embrace is keep the well of the ancestors, the Ba'ala'ov, which is the shamanist. Ba'ala'ov is Hebrew, shamanist, right? And keep the well of the ancestors. And I love this. This is actually a mikveh, where we go, well, depending where you live, where you would go to kind of submerge in water. And keeping the well of the ancestors is really, I love the idea of the well. Now, the well has many meanings across many different cultures. But what I want us to observe in the idea of keeping the well is also in alignment with all the messaging that we're getting. What has been the life sustaining waters for your culture, your community, actually life giving, connected to the ancient ways, connected to your ancestors, connected to the beauty? Are your people a people of the land? Are your people the people of the water, people of the fire, people of the air? And so, really tapping into the traditions and the ways in which your ancestors also experienced joy, also mourned, also knew how to hold the space with all those particular pieces. Let us embrace keeping the well of the ancestors, right? Keeping those waters, preserving the earth that's growing around the well, so that the waters are not contaminated, so that, right, like, and not in a purity Protestant thing, right, but more so in an understanding that water, as fresh, as clean, as untouched by other things, is life-giving, and we need it. The thing to release, it says, serve and guide the sacred. The chachama is the wise woman. Allow yourself to be in service. And service doesn't require you to not be present. Service requires all of you. Embrace the work that you're called to do in the world. Embrace your peace in this collective thread of healing, because it is most important. And I love this. The cards are so beautiful. They're speaking so beautifully. So we're embracing, forgiving, and letting go with loving ease, and keeping the well of the ancestors. Our focuses are to focus on what is working and to delight in the sweetness of life. The things that we're releasing that are blocking is the idea of giving ourselves permission to be and express our sensuality, but also in the way that that sensuality is serving and guiding the sacred through us, in us, around us. Really important to give yourself permission to be that, right? And we don't need to do a whole bunch of talking around it. Y'all know I'm a word witch, so there is no excusing that. And at the same time, I know that the most powerful language is the one that's an embodied living. And so I want to offer up, I hope this was powerful and healing to you. Again, the focus is to focus on what's working, to delight in the sweetness of life. You want to embrace you forgiving and letting go with loving ease, like allow yourself to let go. And also keeping the well of the ancestors, keeping the source of water that gives us life. Also, in our releasing, we're releasing the ways that we've been blocked to express our sensuality, and the ways that we've been blocked to serve and guide the sacred and walk in the wisdom of the wise woman, which sits at the crossroads. She has seen it all. You can't not see it all at the crossroads. So I hope that this was nourishing. I hope that it spoke to you profoundly. And I hope that you are safe and well as can be. And I also hope that you are within the capacity that you have, allowing yourself to engage also in the support of the work that's being done by Black and Brown communities at this moment, by trans communities, really doing the work of dismantling and deconstructing. And that work begins with yourself and myself. Otherwise, as Einstein said, we will be using the same mind that started the problem to try to solve the problem, and that does not work. So I will see you soon again. Thank you so much for your support. I always say this and it doesn't get old for me. Thank you for your support. You have no idea how much your support, both like energetically, just being here, and being a patron to support financially. It means the world to me, and also helps me move past survival. So thank you so much. And I hope you're, as much as can be expected, enjoying your summer and finding liberation and life and all the beautiful small and big things. So until next time, mi gente, adiós.